Good afternoon, everyone. Visa, as a very reputational company and a global leader company in this industry, is now facing increasing competition in this industry. Not only all those traditional companies like MasterCard, American Express, but also to some newly established or newly recently developed companies like UnionPay in China. So it remains a very critical issue for Visa how to deal with them, and at the same time, how to regain the top leader position in the industry. And at the same time, how could Visa penetrate into the Chinese market more successfully? So these remain two very critical issues. So in order to solve these two issues, today we are going to present you a very useful and feasible strategy for Visa to implement, together with a very comprehensive implementation plan. So before that, let's take a look at the markets all over the world with all those growth rates. Apart from Asia Pacific market, we can see that for Latin America, Middle East and Africa have a very high growth rate in terms of financial card circulation. And let's take a look at two particular very special markets. They are newly emerging markets. So we believe that apart from the Asia Pacific, with China as the main leader in this world, the markets in Latin America and Middle East and Africa could not be neglected if Visa would like to pursue and maintain its leadership in this industry. So after seeing this industry situation, let's take a look at a situation in China. So politically, we know that the Chinese government is inclined to help all those local companies because they would like to help them to establish. At the same time, they may have some protection measures in order to help the growth of the local industries. And secondly, there is some kind of currency control, and that constitutes the main reason for Visa why they could not directly enter Chinese market successfully, but instead they have to enter into certain cooperation with UnionPay, and that's political areas have to be addressed properly. And also economically, everyone knows that Chinese market has very strong and stable GDP growth with annual 8% growth. So it remains a very attractive market. At the same time, because of the increasing consumption power of all the Chinese, so if Visa could enter Chinese market successfully, this could earn them a huge profit. And also, the social issues could not be neglected because we know that Chinese customers are very price sensitive. They care the quality of the products and services. At the same time, they care more about the price. They're very price sensitive, and this issue has to be addressed properly. And secondly, the Chinese also have a high trust in foreign brands. Even though they may love all those local brands, but they believe that all those foreign brands are more credible and reliable in terms of service providing. So let's take a look at the Visa strength and weakness, which we know that Visa have the highest payment value in this industry. Even though in terms of number of financial cards, they may not have the highest number, but in terms of payment value, Visa has the highest payment value. And also, it has extensive coverage, which means the payment network, not only in China, not only Asia, but also all over the world in North America and South America. And also, we all know that Visa is a very established reputation. People believe in Visa because they believe that they could be secured and the privacy issue would not be a concern. However, there are two main weaknesses with Visa in terms of Chinese market. First one is that they have a higher transaction fee. They charge mainly 2% for all those transaction fees, of which their competitors may charge lower or even none. And the second one is that because there are two currency conversions, unlike UnionPay, they could convert all those foreign currencies into renminbi. However, because Visa is a foreign company, they could not directly do so. So this remains a very critical issue when they enter the Chinese market. So let's take a look at their opportunities first. The opportunities definitely lies in the fact the huge business potential in the Chinese market. As mentioned before, because of the strong GDP growth and the increasing consumption power, Chinese remain a very attractive market to Visa. At the same time, the threat is that the global competitors, as mentioned before, MasterCard, American Express, and the UnionPay, that competition have to be addressed. And also because of the unfavorable Chinese government attitude. This mainly due to all those previous strategies adopted by Visa. They have launched some kind of WTO engagement together with the US government to complain about the Chinese strategy adopted by government in all those industries. At the same time, because they have some kind of broken disagreement with UnionPay, because of this situation, the Chinese government may have a more unfavorable attitude towards towards Visa. So let's take a look at the UnionPay situation. The strength is that they are under China's central bank's supervision, and because they could receive more support from the central government because they are all local grown companies, and that's what Chinese would like to have. And also there's single currency conversion and lower transaction fee, which give him a competitive edge over Visa. And also the weakness is that they may not have a global-wide distribution network, and at the same time, their foreign currency transaction may not be wide enough as Visa do. So our analysis could be summarized in very short, which is that the social issues in China has to be solved if Visa would like to enter China successfully. And also, not only care about China. In the long term, in order for Visa to establish and maintain its leader position in this industry, there's some work have to be done. So my teammate is going to introduce you our strategy and all those alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Quinson. So as mentioned by my colleague, the first problem we're going to tackle today is that how to capture more market share in China. And we have two options for you. And the first one is we have a cooperation with Chinese UnionPay. The second one is we have a direct competition with them. And let's further look at the two options. If we have a direct competition with the UnionPay, there's some it's very difficult to do that because the UnionPay is the only EPS provider in China, and these were controlled by the government. And another thing is the financial markets in China was mainly controlled by the governments too. So it's very hard for us to compete with China UnionPay. The second one is that if we didn't cooperate with UnionPay, and they will choose to cooperate with our competitor, MasterCard, American Express. So we have a threat here. And the third one is that China, as the huge population and booming economy, will not afford to lose this market. So how about the second option, that we cooperate with the China UnionPay? It's possible that we can utilize our competitive advantage, which is our wide network globally, and with the large population in China and the booming economy of Chinese people, and we can leverage our competitive advantage, and it's possible to have a win-win situation. And then in order to via cooperating with the government, we have a better and better relationship with the government, and so it can prepare our future development in China after Chinese government open its financial markets in the future, maybe 5 years later. So to summarize this evaluation, we can say it's very obvious that it will take a longer time and spend more cost if we have a direct competition with China UnionPay. And the other thing is that the risk is much higher than a cooperation approach, and the benefits may be less. So obviously, today we recommend you to have a cooperation with China UnionPay in the short term and mid-term. And however, one of the most important problems we see from Visa is that they adopted the Western management style in relation to do business in Asia Pacific, especially China. But Chinese people, the culture is very different. So today, our strategy for Chinese business development is that we would have a relationship approach, and then we will have a very friendly and flexible style in doing business and cooperating with the companies and the governments in China and even Asia Pacific. And now, let me introduce you our implementation plan with 3 phases. The first phase, it's within 3 years, we're going to regain trust with China UnionPay, because now we know that they have signed a very important agreement with our biggest competitor, MasterCard. So immediately we have to solve this problem, that we have to regain the trust from them. The second is that we're going to enhance the customer relationship of the Chinese, especially the travelers. We're going to utilize our competitive advantage and to do more business on them. The second phase is that we're going to enhance the government relationship, and we're going to enforce our legal protection and do some marketing reach. All these actions are going to, in order to do a better preparation for a future market development, especially after we have the ability to have our own business in China, after China has opened its financial markets in the future. And in long term, and we will keep innovative in this industry, because now the industry is becoming more and more competitive, and especially, for example, our mobile payments. The second one is that we're going to emerge the markets, because it is a perfect time. Is that we're going to utilize Chinese booming economy and the large population, and with our large network globally, so we can involve more our network into all those customers and gain more revenue on them. And the detailing were talked by Jonathan.
Thank you, Thomas. So let's go to the detail of the implementation plan for Visa. First, we really want to regain the trust with customers. As we see that we have disagreements, and the competition between China UnionPay, and you really want to avoid that. As in, you don't want to direct compete with them, and also to regain the trust, as build a long-term partnership with them. So you have to offer long-term benefits. As in, you can provide, especially the extensive coverage over U.S. international markets, where there's one weakness of China UnionPay doesn't have. And also you can help increase the customer base of since you're an international company, you have a lot of market stories on increasing the use of consumption rate and everything. And also that we know that China UnionPay has a lot of customer base, but not a lot of people is using the credit card, especially because China is a culture where consumers are still having a high level of uncertainty, and cash is still the main tools in doing transaction. And so you want to actually create a need in China to use credit card consumption. And for the second, you actually to avoid directly compete with CUP, you want to aim for quality consumption rate, meaning that you're not aiming for a lot of customers, but the consumption rate of each customer is higher, meaning that this will generate more revenue for your company. And that, for examples, what we can do is travel promotion and discount promotion. Since we know that travels from China to US has been more frequent, and the trend is going up, and that a lot of people in China is spending money in US. You want to actually stimulate this consumer behavior, to spend more in China, and also to use Visa, and to also encourage the consumption for Visa card. And therefore, we recommend that you collaborate with travel agency and retail shopping, to target the price-sensitive consumers, encourage consumption, and also to increase the use of credit cards, because you want to reduce the level of uncertainty of Chinese consumer in using credit cards and the safety concerns that they have. So if they use more in long term, they will get used to it and it will become a habit. And that credit card, in general, in China, will be a success, and the growth rate will be high. And for the midterm, since we know that after 5 years the market will be open fully, and that the regulation will be off. And so you actually want to collaborate with the government directly, meaning that you don't really want to implement a Western culture in the Chinese area, but you actually want to collaborate with government directly instead of going through WTO to file a lawsuit, instead of offensing them. And therefore, relationship with the government is very important in China. And so, what benefits? What can you do to actually enhance relationship? And first, you can offer international development with local partners in China, as we know that China really cares about its local companies in China, and also attracting consumption from overseas in China to boost the tourist economy, because not only does China travelers travel overseas, but also overseas, especially from US, who come to the China market to spend. And also enhancing the relationship with the government long term, and that's very important especially in the policy area. And next, for preparation for further development, we also want to hire local lawyers to tackle the regulation in China, because as we know that the political system is still developing in China, and that we really want to have legal protection, and also bypassing the legal constraints in China. And so keep track of China's future policy on how to gain advantage of the legal barriers, And for the second one, you would also want to do some market research, as in the consumer trends of China, and in how does Chinese people use credit card, and what kind of uncertainty, what kind of purchase decision process would they go through, and what kind of tools would they prefer in purchasing or in doing shopping in the retail stores. And the second thing, as of course is important, is consumption behavior. And now, after talking the short-term and mid-term implementation plan, Johnny will talk about the rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Now we talk about long-term implementation. First of all, we have a yes, thank you. We have a new kind of technology and methods to facilitate the transaction. As we all know that the NFC techniques in the world now is developing. So the NFC refers to near field communication. It's a new, brand new technique for the transaction. So for the long term, we believe that this will be the certain trend for the payment. And the benefits of this payment is that you can shorten the transaction time because you just use your mobile phone to touch the sensor, and then your transaction will be done. And then you can capture the routine transaction, not only a large amount of cash transaction in China, because in China's consumer behavior, they tend to use credit cards because they want to avoid a very big amount of cash transaction in banknotes. So the NFC mobile payments will be definitely the trend for long-term implementation. And yes, and we now have to target the emerging markets. For example, we can actually leverage the comparative advantage of Visa because you have the wide coverage worldwide, and you have the well brand recognition, so that you can actually reinforce and develop more in some of the emerging markets like the Latin American, Middle East, and Africa, because they are the booming economies as well in the long term. Also, you have to enforce the sustainable operation in these emerging markets, because you have to know the government attitude of those markets, because they are somehow in these developing countries, they are not transparent in those policy making. So you have to get note to the government's attitude. Of course, cooperation and competition would be the main concern in enforcing the sustainable operation. For example, cooperation in some emerging market with the local banks, and how to drive competition with your competitors like the Mastercards as well as the American Express. Furthermore, the consumption pattern and behavior of that particular emerging market should be enhanced, so that you can actually form a team of local expertise to do research on those areas to take the opportunity of the emerging markets. So after taking a look at our implementation plan, we now like to talk about the key performance indicators to measure the success of our implementation. So the first, the market share of Visa is definitely one of the key performance indicators, as well as the ranking in terms of the transaction value as well as the market share. And finally would be the number of financial cards in your spectrum of the operations. So now we would like to draw attention to the financial projection, that is to increase in the market share as well as the net income of Visa. So with our implementation plan, we hope that by year or 5 years that China opens its market transparently to the financial institution, the market share of China will be grown from 3.1% to 10%, so that the more and more customers are willing to use the cards provided from Visa, as well as the market share in global will increase from 39.8% to 45% because of the emerging markets operations. So the net income would increase from $3,650 million by the end of 2015. Which reached to $6,470 million. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, members of board, today we have present to you our detailed analysis as well as the implementation. So now our teammate will going to join us to address any issues that you may have. Thank you.
You were talking about wanting to rebuild trust. Can we rebuild trust with CUP while we're basically kicking their butt through the WTO?
So we think that that's a great concern, because we cannot, on one hand, we are filing all the lawsuits against China, and on the other hand, we are helping the local economies. But because of this action has already taken the US government, because it has happened several years ago, and on one hand, because we know that this has happened, we are already filing a lawsuit against China. But at the same time, we hope that because by using our own implementation plans, like helping the local industry to develop and collaborating with all those small banks, we hope that this could build some kind of trust and regain trust, not only from the Chinese government, but as well as the Union Pay. Because we know that the WTO lawsuit has been filed. So we believe that we have to do more to compensate and to rebuild the reputation and as well as the good attitude, trust with the government.
So should we step out of the WTO action and say we're not involved anymore?
Yes, we think we should not step back. Actually, we have the Visa and the MasterCard and American Express. They have alliance and push the U.S. Government to have. This is a kind of diplomatic pressure on the Chinese government, and we see this as our opportunity. So on the one hand, and we have the opportunity in the political side, and on the other hand, we ourselves, other than our competitors, ourselves, we want to do something to internally contribute our efforts and help the local governments, local banks, and UnionPay to develop, and then we get benefit, especially when the financial markets is open and we can do our business, because they have a very strong customer base, and we didn't afford to, we are not afford to have a direct competition with them. Yeah.
New field communication, great concept. Questions I have around revenue and capital required to implement this. On the revenue base, you touched on conversion of foreign currency. Do you have any ideas around that? And will that still be an issue with new field communication? And have you any ideas around capital deployment to bring out a new technology?
Oh, yes. Thank you for your question. So for the funding of the new technology, and this, we think that on the one hand, we should have a prioritize of this funding allocation resources. For example, most of the resources are put in our existing products and the business, and then some of them have adjacent products and business, and then this innovative part that we're preparing is for long term. So we think as the situation here, 20% of the funding should be allocated for the innovative products for the future in terms to respond to competitors' action.
In your presentation, you mentioned regain trust from CUP and also try to enhance the government relationship. You also mentioned at the very beginning is that Visa is not culturally sensitive. So what are you going to do about that?
This is a great concern, because we believe that when Visa first entered into agreement with UnionPay, they may not be that culturally sensitive enough. We believe that this could be enhanced, and like what we have suggested in our implementation plan, for example, in the human resources management aspects, we would like to recruit and select all those local legal expertise, so it should help us to know more about the Chinese market, to know more about the future legal barriers that we may encounter in the future, so that we could hope by doing so we could have a more detailed and understanding of the Chinese market. And on the other hand, because we know that even though we have some kind of disagreement with UnionPay, but because through this incident we know more about the customers, and we know at Visa we know more about the consumer behaviors. For example, they may be more price sensitive, and that's why Chinese customer may intend to use UnionPay because they charge a lower transaction fee. So we believe that in human resources management, we have to do more by recruiting all those local expertise so as to boost the local knowledge of Visa company. So this is not only useful when entering Chinese market, but also in the future, when Visa would like to enter other emerging markets, we believe that before they enter the market, they have to do a very thorough research over that market, over the culture, and hire more local expertise so as to help them to deepen their understanding over the markets they are going to enter. Thank you.
In China, business are normally conducted with guanxi. So are you suggesting that Visa is going to go down that route?
No, actually we didn't suggest that. And actually we think there are several ways we can to have a shared wheels with the government or with the local people. For example, we can some of the equipment or infrastructure or channels we can use those things controlled by the government, and when we do business, and those governments get benefits too. And so this kind of incentive for them to cooperate with us. So we didn't suggest to do those things that you mentioned.
Well, I just mentioned guanxi doesn't mean anything negative.
Yeah, so we want to have a proactive approach on this, because this is, as you mentioned, this is very important in China.
I have a bit of a two-part question, I guess. So the two options you gave us was go head-to-head with CUP or cooperate, work together. But I'm wondering about a 50-50 strategy. So, because I'm wondering if the opportunity is really there in China to make it worth the effort. Because one option we have is just to keep doing what we're doing in China until the market opens up. And I wonder about that because you made a point about the market being price sensitive, and we know that's one of our weaknesses. And then you made a point, Jonathan made a great point about that cards aren't really the way in which things are paid for, and that's kind of evidenced right now by the fact that CUP have as many cards as we do, but only 11% of the revenue, if you like, of the transaction value. So is the opportunity really there, and does that change your recommendation?
Okay, this is a very good insight about especially the future development in China. As we know that China is still a developing country, and that consumers are actually also growing, and that technology and investment in China is all growing. It means that consumers in the future will actually start gain contact with the Western cultures, and also get more understanding about the Western culture. So actually in the future, credit card usage in China will actually improve, as it's just that I haven't seen the value of the product yet. So that's why our implementation suggests that we provide some incentive to the customers, as in target their price sensitivity behavior, because you really want to encourage them to try using credit card, and also create the need to use credit card for consumption, especially to overseas and also in the local markets.
Okay.
And maybe I can add one more little point on this. As you mentioned, that the UnionPay have many cards, but the revenue is only 11% of the Visa. So the reason is that they have many people in the rural area. They have very low income level, and they have used the cards and very so we concern this in our discussion, and we think we still have to cooperate with UnionPay in China, because it is so strong, and the customer base is founded for a long time, and it is better to us. We capture those people in the first tier city and who were very international, who want to go abroad, and we will utilize our competitive advantage to tackle those people. But then those rural areas with large population, and we didn't think this is our first priority to do those people's business.
You've spoken about price sensitivity. How are you going to bring down your transaction fee cost to the consumer? So at the moment we have if you compare it globally, 2% transaction fee. In other markets it's much lower, CUP far lower. Yeah. How are we going to bring down the Visa transaction fee?
I think that's a great concern, because transaction fee is pretty high for Visa when compared with all those offered by the competitors. So because we think that China is a very special market, with a culture of that they're very sensitive to price. So what we are going to suggest is that we may not, on one hand, change rapidly the transaction fee offered in China, but instead we are going to offer them some incentives to spend more, to use Visa card more, but not to reduce all the transaction fee in one-off approach. We would like to offer them more discount, more incentive to use Visa card, so that we could earn more transaction, and on the other hand, they will not be avoid using Visa card because of the high transaction fee. Thank you.
All right, that concludes the Q&A session. I'd like to thank the students from the Hong Kong Baptist here for their presentation.
It's a little bit, hybrid, it just looked at one thing rather than...
They had conviction, that was sure.
Okay, so sort of a question around that.
Okay. So what do you think about Team 3?
I'm struggling with Poly U, to be honest. But again, that might be the distance of time.
Yeah. Well, as I said, maybe I put down that's a good mark, probably because this is
the
first impression.
One.
Yeah.
I mean, they did. I liked when they were positioning China. They were comparing, Google and Apple and Nike and the cup of coffee and the carrot. I like that.
Yeah,
and some other good examples of what other Chinese companies were doing. It was all very much though based around the long haul.
Mm.
And while they were passionate, there was a lot of focus on how to do it. But once again, I was saying when I was kneeling down, just not enough substance for me in the why.
Detail.
Why would we do that?
Yeah.
Whereas I found that both Team 2 and 3 actually did talk about why.
Yeah.
You know, in fact, Team 3 had it as a heading.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give them the rest of the world to get China approach work. You know. That was some of the stuff I guess in my head why I marked them down.
Yeah, and that's HQ's. I was actually surprised by my marks for science and technology, because for that reason as well, it was, why are you giving up the world to get into China? And they focus on Latin America quite a lot.
Yeah.
What about the US? What about Europe?
Yeah. So that's the reason why I also mark it down a bit.
Yeah. And the fact that the in the US, the antitrust piece and the WTO, I'm not sure that was thought through as well. So
Yeah.